그래서 LA에서 처음 이제 실제 만났었을 때 우리 미키 때문에 그때 딱 카페에서 네가 들어오는 걸 보고 아 됐다 미키 스킨톤이다라고.
My normal attitude as myself is kind of just like a rodent. Like I look like a kind of a mouse in the restaurant, like kind of like terrified of being. But do you not think that a director's decided within like 1 second? They just look at someone's face.
근데 딱 들어올 때 이미 미키 17 느낌이다 그런 거 있었죠. 그러니까 마음이 편해졌었지.
I went to like Fashion Week. I was still digesting my Pikachu. No, it's delicious. It's delicious. I used to watch a lot of like really dark stuff when I was younger, and just I wish I could like be with the guys and like talk about sports. Like I don't know, if you're talking to me about
football.
The only thing I know is like conspiracy theories on Reddit.
Hello there. I got a movie review for you guys today because the last time I did a review was... Oh, shit! This guy stinks! Oops, my bad. I'm sorry about the huge gap between movie reviews. I've just been really busy, and funny enough, I actually did watch a lot of movies last year, and now here we are, the Oscars are over. Half the shit I would want to talk about has already been talked about to death. Not saying I won't do it, but I figured it's about time I make a normal video talking about a normal movie for normal people. To all the Gundam nerds, don't worry, I'm still working on the Gundam videos. And woo, we gotta start the year off right by talking about what was probably my most anticipated movie of the year, Bong Joon-ho's long-awaited Mickey 17. This is one of those movies I was already on board with before I even knew what the title was. All I read in articles years ago was that Bong Joon-ho and Robert Pattinson were working together on a film, and that was more than enough to get me really excited. Of course, for many of you, the first thing you think when you hear Bong Joon-ho is Parasite, which obviously won Best Picture. Needless to say, Parasite is a masterclass on filmmaking, and it rightfully earned the man a shitload of Oscars.
Yes, now kiss.
This put an immense amount of pressure on him to follow up that act. Unfairly so, in my opinion. The other heavy hitter, of course, would be Memories of Murder. Many would argue is his best film, but for my personal favorite that's near and dear to my heart, it was actually the first movie I saw of his, and that was The Host. If you've never seen The Host, go out and see it right now. It's this beautifully written kaiju monster movie as told through the perspective of this family. And when writing it, Bong Joon-ho said that he was inspired by Signs, which is great because that was one of my favorites as a child. And if I had to compare it to a modern film, it definitely would be Godzilla Minus One. It has that strong emotional core, and it's really just a family drama that happens to have a giant creature in it. And I recently rewatched it with my nephew, and it holds up so well. So I cannot recommend enough that you watch this film. And as for our boy, Robert Pattinson, I mean, come on. The Robert Pattinson renaissance going on right now is so iconic. He was unfairly clowned on in the mid-2000s for all the Twilight films, which admittedly I've seen every one in theaters with my dad. Say what you will about those films, they will remain a part of tween nostalgia pop culture forever. But in order to avoid being typecasted, actors really need that one role, just that one hit to alter the public's perception about them. And for me, that probably was Good Time. If you haven't seen Good Time, that's an excellent movie to see Robert Pattinson's range. He followed it up with something even crazier with The Lighthouse, and actually managed to stay toe-to-toe and keep up with Willem Dafoe.
Fortnite. Sticky laugh, snoring. You goddamn farts! You goddamn farts!
And for The Boys, he solidified himself as a man of the people with The Batman. I actually owe a lot of my success on this channel to Rob because of this dumb little meme edit I made of him years ago that earned me almost 1 million views. So thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for the views. So with the genius mind of Bong Joon-ho and the raw acting talent of Robert Pattinson, the two of these things combined should make something perfect. That was all I needed to hear to get my ass in the seat. My personal theory was that with Mickey Mouse becoming public domain in 2024, clearly this is Bong Joon-ho's brilliant reimagining of Michael Mouse. I mean, what's better than one Mickey? 17 Mickeys. So my dumbass went in there embarrassed as hell wearing Mickey Mouse ears, but what I ended up watching was one of the goofiest, craziest sci-fi films I've seen in a long time. Let's get into it. Mickey 17 stars Robert Pattinson as the titular Mickey Barnes, a desperate worker who, in debt to some bad people, signs on to a space colony expedition desperate to leave Earth. Because he has no particular set of skills that would qualify him for such a journey, he hastily agrees to be an expendable, a class of worker whose sole job is to literally die and be reborn over and over again as he's cloned in an organic 3D printer. His situation gets even more sticky when Mickey accidentally becomes a multiple and slowly unravels a plot involving a corrupt politician. Starring alongside our protagonists is Naomi Ackie as Nasha, Steven Yeun as Timo, Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall, and Toni Collette as Yelfa Marshall. Just to be clear, the Mickey Mouse shit was just a bit. Obviously, I didn't think this was a fucking Mickey Mouse movie. However, I did go in without really watching any trailers because I really wanted it to be a surprise, and I'm so happy I did that. So I'm just gonna say it right here, right now. From the title of this video, you can probably tell I like this movie quite a bit. And I don't think I'm gonna go into spoilers in this video, but even with that, I do recommend going into this movie completely blind, because this actually did throw me for a loop. You never really knew what was gonna happen next. It was very exciting, and most importantly, it was original. I think that's really the best thing I could say about this film, and one of the best things I could say about Bong Joon-ho is that whether you love or hate this movie or feel that he's overrated, the one thing you can't say about him is that he's unoriginal. Yes, a lot of his movies talk about class struggle and are metaphors for different aspects of society, but I mean, what art isn't really? And every movie he puts out really feels like his vision, even when they're stylistically so different from each other. And you know what? Nowadays you hear so many people crying and complaining that there's no original movies and that everything's a copy or a remake or a sequel, and finally we have something that's really weird, really quirky, really original, and no one's going to see it. I have so many people who didn't even know that this movie was already out, and it has bombed at the box office. So for the love of God, support this movie if you support original works. But if you want me to talk about the movie without spoilers, don't worry, you can still stay, and I'm not going to get into any major spoilers. So let's go ahead and talk about this movie. And I think the best place to start is to talk about Mickey himself. I adore this character. I loved this character, and luckily this movie really is centered all around him and his story. It's all through his perspective, it's through his narration, and Robert Pattinson developed this accent. I don't know quite how to describe it. It definitely has this kind of dumbass sound to it. I guess is the best way to say it, but he is the most lovable, affable, goofy, silly dumbass in this movie. And it's a role I haven't really seen him play before. And he's really such a chameleon. After a while, I stopped seeing Robert Pattinson and I just saw Mickey, which is a really hard thing to do. And that's a big compliment to him. Robert Pattinson's one of those actors that I feel like Hollywood tried to pin as your leading man. He could very easily turn into like a Tom Cruise or, some kind of typecasted actor. Don't get me wrong, I love a good rom-com or heartthrob, whatever, but he's so much more than that, and it's so obvious in interviews that he really wants to be seen as a character actor, and he's proven himself time and time again, and here is no exception. We're not blessed with just one, but actually several different performances from him in one movie, because the film is about cloning. So Mickey has many different iterations, and the funny thing is that the original book is actually called Mickey 7. Well, this is Mickey 17, and when Bong Joon-ho was asked why he changed it from 7 to 17, he just said, I wanted to kill him more. He just wanted to kill the character more, which is a completely valid reason, and they really, really play with that concept. Broadly speaking, this film is a lot more comedic. I would go as far as to call it a comedy. However, there are these really dark, cynical elements that give it this kind of grit and dirt and grime and just make it feel really shitty, but not to the point of losing heart. That's the good thing, it's that it's very balanced. This is gonna be a really obscure throwback, but the people who get it will get it. It reminded me a lot of the Abe's Oddworld games because, it's about classism, it's about workers' rights and workers' struggles, and it's set in this gross factory-like setting, and it just gives the movie this dirt and grime. And this is amplified by the fact that the entire movie is through his perspective. So right from the get-go, Mickey is just down on his luck. His supposed friend in the film, Tony, played by Steven Yeun, convinces him to get into a business, and I'm not gonna say what it is, but if you've seen the movie, it is so stupid and so ridiculous, but somehow he's convinced that this business is gonna be this thriving, get-rich-quick scheme, and it goes horribly, horribly wrong. To make things worse, they got a loan from the mob to start this business, so they're in deep shit. They're both hopeless, and they need to get off Earth before the mob catches up to them. But this is when we really get to learn about Mickey. He's more of a follower, he doesn't see himself as a hero, and he's really stupid. He's a sweetheart who's just looking for love in all the wrong places. And Steven Yeun's character is clearly this slimy weasel, schemer who's basically just using him and his stupidity. And even though he's a big cheat, somehow he always finds a way to get himself out of situations. He has this shit-eating grin, but no one sees through it, and he somehow is able to finesse himself and fail upwards, which is just so fun to watch. He's one of those characters where you want to hate him, but you can't because he's just played so well. And Steven Yeun is so great. I love everything he's in. He was great in Beef, and of course I love him on Conan O'Brien. So even though we don't get to see the two of them together for long, I really love the way that Steven Yeun and Pattinson played off of each other. Like any good idiot, Mickey signed away his life on a contract that he clearly did not read the fine print of because he saw it as his golden ticket to get out of there. This sets up a tragedy about a young man who just wanted to save his life only to end it over and over and over again in more and more painful ways. The Expendable program, of course, is this cloning procedure in which they get to use you and your immortality to experiment with all kinds of crazy shit, including deep space exploration. And even though it's played up for laughs, it's not without empathy. The first time I saw Mickey get hurt, I audibly gasped. That shit was shocking. It was awful. You feel so bad for the guy, and then you hear all the scientists speaking to him so candidly, so coldly. They just don't give a shit because he literally gave consent to be killed. You just see him looking around so scared and confused like a lost child. At first I would laugh, but then this deep, disturbed paternal instinct comes out. I'm like, leave my boy Mickey alone. It's from this point on that the tone is established of this back and forth humor and tragedy that I think worked really well. It's a very delicate dance, but Bong Joon-ho is one of those directors who just takes crazy risks. And this movie doesn't really feel like a whole lot of other movies I've seen. It really is an original, and if anything, it's reminiscent of something like a Black Mirror, a genre film with a very simple, high concept idea that's played with in a very unique way. If I had to compare it to anything, it reminded me a lot of the work of Paul Verhoeven. I'm a huge RoboCop and Total Recall and Starship Troopers fan. It has that very campy tone, but it's very, very self-aware, and it's not afraid to get dark, and it doesn't feel insincere. You can tell everyone was on board, and it's exactly what it's supposed to be. And this is what I think is going to make or break the film for most people. I think a lot of people coming hot off the trail of Parasite were expecting something a little bit more introspective, something a little bit more grounded. Obviously it's sci-fi, but I think they wanted something more dramatic like that film. And this film definitely, again, has drama, it has tragedy, it does have emotion, it does have heart, but it isn't afraid to get really silly, really goofy, and just play around. And similar to Parasite, there's a moment halfway through where something that they set up at the beginning made you think one thing, and then you realize you were wrong. There's a twist. I'm not gonna say what it is, but there was a moment that genuinely surprised me, and it completely changes the course of the story for the rest of the film, all the way up to the climax. So it kind of shares that parallel with Parasite. If you've seen both movies, I think you know what I'm referring to. But there's a certain character, or rather a set of characters that you think are going to do one thing and then they do another, and it just completely alters the course of our hero's journey. And as I mentioned before, Robert Pattinson gets to play two different characters in this. Well, technically he plays 17, but a lot of these Mickeys are killed off in a very quick montage, so I don't really count them. Our two main Mickeys is Mickey 17 and Mickey 18. Is this a reference to Android 17 and 18 from Dragon Ball? Probably not, but it is a weird coincidence. Mickey 17 being the lovable dumbass, and Mickey 18 being a much more sinister and mysterious character. I never thought I could hear that voice come out of his mouth and actually find it intimidating, but what can I say, the man did it. But I gotta stop crushing on Rob and talk about his love interest real quick, Nasha, played by Naomi Ackie. Their romance sparks very fast, yet it doesn't feel ingenuine. Just from how cute the performances were, I completely bought that she was smitten by him. And for me, she was really the heart of the film that kept it from feeling so damn dour. And again, I don't want to really spoil anything, but where her character ends up, I did not expect. But as for my other favorite performance in this movie, it has to go to Mark Ruffalo. He is unapologetically a complete and total cartoon in this movie, which again, I think for some people is going to be a big turnoff if it's not expected, but for me was such a pleasant surprise. So he plays a very like Donald Trump type dictator, president, mayor type character, and all his followers literally have the red hats and everything. Bong has claimed in interviews that he wasn't specifically trying to spoof Donald Trump, but if that's really true, he's a Nostradamus, because there's a scene that mirrors the real life assassination attempt, and if that was an accident, damn, yeah, I mean, we really do have a Nostradamus on our hands. He's a character that is delightfully evil. You hate him, but you love to hate him. And looking back, it actually makes a lot of sense that Bong would want Ruffalo for this part, considering how great of an asshole he was in Poor Things. His character is a complete asshole, but he's also an incompetent buffoon, which I think could get really annoying really fast, but he does such a good job at it, you can't help but laugh. And you have Toni Collette as his wife calling the shots and whispering in his ear and kind of manipulating him to do her bidding. And the two of them are so great together. I could not get enough of them. And thankfully they were in the movie a lot. And it's great when you have a villain that you're rooting against, but at the same time you like watching. Again, it's a delicate balance. I never felt annoyed when I wasn't supposed to be. And me and my friends were laughing out loud the entire time. So some people might criticize them for being simple one-note villains, but they serve their purpose in the story. And also too, again, the performances are just done so well. If it really wasn't for those performances, you know, this could have not worked, but Bong Joon-ho had all of these actors in mind when he wrote these parts, and went as far as to storyboard the entire movie whenever he handed them the scripts. So every inch of this thing is his vision, and again, that's why it works so well. He's a visionary in the sense that he really does rely on a lot of visual slapstick humor, which is great because that's funny as shit no matter what language you speak. This is a movie that plays well with almost any audience internationally. Like your classic Charlie Chaplin stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm stupid and I have terrible taste. Again, this movie is getting very, very mixed reviews, but I still think that a lot of that has to do with expectations. There's also another very, very small group of people who are complaining about this movie because of its adaptation of the book Mickey 7. This film is very much not a one-to-one adaptation of that book. I haven't read it, but I have talked to people who have, and I've read some articles talking about the differences. And the big thing is that Mickey in the book is more of an intellectual, while in the film he's more of a working class, average Joe kind of guy. And that serves the purpose of this particular story a lot more. Bong Joon-ho wanted to tell a story about classism. He wanted to touch on those themes, and the book is a lot more broad. It really plays up the ethics of cloning and all the different things you could do with the cloning process, while the film very briefly kind of scuffs over that and in favor of telling this story about this one guy and his journey on this planet. And again, I haven't read the book, so I'm not going to have that bias, and I'm going to enjoy the film for what it is. But I get, you know, people, when you're attached to a book and you see a film and it doesn't adapt it the way you thought in your head, I can totally see why. But this film works so well as its own thing. It's like they say, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think if you just go in knowing that you're gonna have a laugh and that you're gonna go on this wild ride that's gonna go on all these twists and turns, I think it's a lot more forgiving. And by the way, I don't think saying just turn your brain off and enjoy a film is a good mantra to have. And I'm not saying that about this film. There are plenty of movies I hate that people have told me, oh, just turn your brain off and enjoy, but the writing sucks. I think the writing of this film is great. You have an excellent cast giving a great performance from a genius director giving his sole vision. It's a complete package for me, and I think over time will become somewhat of a cult classic. And I'm gonna say it here and now, the creepers are awesome. The little critters, the little creature in this. I want a creeper in my backpack so bad. I just want to carry it around, wear one of those baby harnesses on my chest, and just put them in there and just feed them little snacks. If I don't get a creeper for Christmas, I'm gonna have a fit. Throughout the course of the film, many characters ask Mickey over and over, what's it like to die? What's it like to die? And every time he says how scary it is and how painful it is and how much he hates it. And it pulled at my heartstrings. He's someone that many would see as pathetic, but really deep down he has this heart of gold, and it comes out more and more as you see the movie. And you see both Mickey 17 and Mickey 18 go on this arc, and I loved it. But for as much praise as I'm giving this movie, I did have one major complaint, and that comes with the ending. I'm not going to get into the specific details, but I felt like it wrapped up just a little too quick. The movie opens and closes with Mickey's narration, and I'm fine with having a cute little storybook ending. But from the climactic finale to the ending credits, there's this montage that just tries to quickly wrap everything up and tell you what happens, and I kind of felt it was unnecessary. It left me with a little bit more questions than answers, and I found myself a little frustrated with just how quickly and how neatly everything wrapped up. But in this case, the ending wasn't paramount, and it didn't sour my overall enjoyment. I still left the theater with a big ass grin on my face, and I recommended this to everyone I know. So I'm gonna do the same thing today, and I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. It's not perfect by any means, but I do think it is great. And it shows Bong Joon-ho's and Robert Pattinson's willingness to experiment and go outside their comfort zone, which sadly is something you don't really see from a lot of big budget movies these days. So if you've already seen the movie, let me know what you think. Did you enjoy it as much as me, or am I full of shit as per usual? As always, thank you so much for watching, and to all the newcomers, if you've made it this far, hopefully that means you enjoy my awful rambling and yapping. So please hit the subscribe button. Or you know what, actually, don't ever let a man tell you what to do. Don't ever let the man tell you what to do. Do whatever the hell you want. I love you guys. Bye.